Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, September 21st, 2019. Yeah, sometimes you look at life, try to do nice. Things occurred. Things could be exhibited better. But that's one of the things we have. And unfortunately, when you have individuals that like to hurt others, disrespecting other people's places, it becomes a burden within those facilities. Not here to condemn, not here to jump the gun or anything like that. But with those particular activities, if you're going to go around beating up people, 3 against 1 and all that, in due time, it can backfire. Don't be the ones crying to me. Even if one of your accomplices are involved, gets taken out, and dies, you will get murder. And the prosecutors could care less. Has happened many times. Multiple states. But fortunate for me, I'm alright. Down but not out. And it's all well and good. Not embarrassed but inspired. Shall be. Doesn't kill you, make you stronger. I know that's an old quote by Friedrich Nietzsche. Or Nietzsche, how do you want to pronounce it? A lot of people have been using it now, so. But it's just one thing I always tell my listeners. You can tell the people you care for, don't fall to the dark side of life. If you do, it can hurt you or someone you cherish. I have no bitterness or anything like that. I could exhibit myself better at times. And boldly admit it. I can make it better. But sometimes it gets instantaneous or spontaneous. But that's alright. I'm still here. So, without further ado, we're going to read some articles here. Very interesting. And of course, with the whole Saudi oil reservoirs being attacked, they want to blame it on Iran. And there's even claimed by the Yemen's Shia Houthi. And people believe they're worried about Saudi Arabia. Well, I'm one of those individuals that say no to foreign entanglement. And I don't give a damn what Mike Pompeo has to say, or any of his cabinet members. And it's funny, Liz Cheney made that same statement, we should use military force against Iran. Will she go in the front line of battle if that occurs? You gotta call these people out for who they are. Wants everyone to do their dirty work. All wars are bankster wars. Major wars, to be exact. And that's been occurring since the 1770s, recorded. May go further than that, for all we know. So, speaking of Saudi Arabia, this one here came from LouRockwell.com. And it's entitled, "The Saudis get a taste of their own medicine, by Eric S. Margolis. As it reads, the Mideast has its own variety of crazy humor. The Saudis have been blasting and bombing wretched Yemen, one of the world's poorest nations since 2015. These U.S.-supported attacks and naval blockade of Yemen imposed by Saudi Arabia and its sidekick ally, the United Arab Emirates, have caused mass starvation. No one knows how many Yemenis have died or are currently starving. Estimates run from 250,000 to 1 million. The black humor. The Saudis claim they were victims of Iranian aggression. This past week, after the kingdom's leading oil treatment facility at Abqaiq was hit by a flight of armed drones or cruise missiles. The usual American militarist, now led by State Secretary Mike Pompeo, after the demented warmonger John Bolton was finally fired, are calling for military retaliation against Iran, even though the attack was claimed by Yemen's Shia Houthi. Interesting, right? Movement. This drama came at roughly the same time that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a close ally to the U.S. President Donald Trump, vowed to annex Palestine's entire Jordan Valley if elected. Not a peep of protest came from the U.S., which recently blessed Netanyahu's annexation of Syria's Golan Heights, while scourging Russia's leader Vladimir Putin for annexing Crimea, a Russian possession for over 300 years. You see how that goes? It's like a lot of double speak in here, right? I studied U.S. photos of the damaged Saudi oil installations. Its oil tanks appear to be precisely hit at the same place. After the attack, the Saudis claim half of their oil production was knocked out, but a day later they vowed production would be resumed within a week. Parts of so-called drones were shown that appeared way beyond the technological capabilities of Yemen or even Iran. The missiles may have been supplied by Ukraine. The Saudis, like their patron in Washington, have a poor record for truthfulness. Remember the Saudis' denial about the murder of journalist and Saudi critic Jamal Khashoggi? More important, we've been waiting for more false flag attacks in the Gulf designed to justify a U.S. attacking Iran, which is part of the Eurasian region, I would say. Absolutely. The pattern of so-called drone attacks against the Saudi oil installations is just too neat and symmetrical. The Israelis have a strong interest in promoting a U.S.-Saudi war. The attacks in Saudi came ironically right after the 9/11 anniversary of 9/11 that plunged the U.S. into war against large parts of the Muslim world. As a longtime military observer, I find it hard to believe that drones could be guided over such long distances and so accurately without aircraft or satellites to guide them. In Yemen, which is just creeping into the 12th century, changing a flat tire is a major technological achievement. To date, Iran's missile arsenal has poor reliability and major guidance problems. Adding to the questions, the Saudis have spent billions on U.S.-made air defense systems. They fail to protect the oil installations. The Saudis would have been better off buying air defenses from the Russians at a quarter of the U.S. selling price. Trump at least showed some wisdom by so far rejecting demands from the neocons that surround him to launch a major attacks on Iran. Blasting Iran would not serve much purpose and would become the U.S. forces in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Somalia, and Syria to Iranian guerrilla attacks. The Saudi oil installations, after we saw last week, are vulnerable. Attacking Iran, even if it just from the air, risk a much wider Mideast war, just as the Trump administration, which originally campaigned against stupid Mideast wars, faces next year's elections. But the administration is under intense pressure from its pro-Israel base to go after Iran. That's right. Butt out. That's all I'll say. Bombing Iran's oil infrastructure would be relatively easy and has been intensively planned early since 2002. But what next? So-called regime change, Washington's favorite euphemism for overthrowing disobedient foreign government, rarely works as planned and gets the U.S. into horribly messy situations. The CIA overthrew Iran's democratic government in 1953, and look where we are today. Perhaps the attacks on Abrego may cause the reckless Saudi leaders to stop devastating Yemen and throttle attack back on their proxy war against Iran, which has gone since 1979. But don't count on it. Yes, my friends, it's been going on for 40 years. Very interesting. Sad thing about that, rank and file gets shafted the most, regardless of side. Why should the United States get involved? I say never. This is the Saudis' issue. You get a taste of their own medicine? Absolutely. It's called blowback. People will find ways of countering. We should not get involved in foreign entanglements. We need to bring all of our troops home, serving overseas, protecting the country, the borders, and so forth. Not thinning them out for the empire. Not being any nation's lapdog or watchdogs. Plain and simple. Imperialism, or being an empire, backfires. Bad foreign policy affects things. Look what happened with the immigration. Yeah, well, like I said before, it's all part of the Club of Rome. But bad foreign policy makes things happen. And why should we get involved in Saudi's affairs? Let them be. They made their own mess. Let them clean it up. Hands off Iran. Doesn't mean I'm in love with their government. Just to clarify that. Alright. This one here. Came from thefreethoughtproject.com. This is the title here. Federal court rules cops can steal your stuff, and it does not violate this Constitution. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld a ruling which declared police can't constitutionally steal your possessions. Just to let you know, this happened on September 20th. It was released. Called civil asset forfeiture. The police are under no obligation to give the property back to you. Instead, police departments will steal your stuff, hold it in storage, accruing fees in most cases, and then sell your stuff to the highest bidder. Police have no qualms about stealing your property, especially after you've been arrested for a crime. Even though every citizen is supposedly innocent until proven guilty, police routinely confiscate cash, guns, and real property from those who've been charged with the crime. Even property from other members of a family living under the same roof. After all, it is difficult to prove ownership without a receipt. Most sinister, however, is that the fact that you need not even be accused of a crime for police to steal your stuff. Most egregious case in civil asset forfeiture of which we are aware comes from Oklahoma. To keep society safe, sheriff deputies in Muskogee County, Oklahoma robbed a church and an orphanage of $53,000. Real American heroes. Iwa, at 40, a refugee from Burma who became a U.S. citizen more than a decade ago, was traveling with the cash to deliver it to the intended recipients when he was targeted by modern-day state-sanctioned pirates for a broken taillight. Iwa had been entrusted with the money by the members of his Christian band who had been on the 19th city tour raising funds for the Dr. T. Tabaya Christian Institute, a religious liberal arts college in Burma serving the Karen community there. And they had also collected funds for the Hisathu Leah Orphanage in Thailand, which serves internally displaced Karen people. Clearly a viable host for the parasitic process. Iwa's English was incompatible with that of the deputies, and he was accused of trafficking drugs. A canine was called to the scene and naturally alerted to the vehicle. As the Three Thought Project has reported in the past, drug dogs will alert your vehicle nearly every single time they are brought out, regardless of actual having drugs or not. In spite of the fact that not one single bit of contraband was found, Iwa was brought to the station and interrogated for hours. Police even called on Iwa's friend in the band who confirmed the story, but the cops with the dollar signs in their eyes still believe this story was inconsistent. Iwa then released without charges and sent on his way. Police kept his cash and Iwa kept his broken taillight. How nice is that? With the latest ruling by the Ninth Circuit, police will have no problem getting back to the work of stealing people's cash and property. The Ninth Circuit ruled on a case involving illegal gambling. Michael Jessup and Brittany Agion were homeowners and sued the city of Fresno, California, as well as several officers. Following the raid of their illegal gambling establishment, officers issued a receipt for property totaling $50,000, but the homeowners contend the cops stole another $225,000, for which they did not receive a receipt. Following the search, the city officers gave appellants an inventory sheet stating that they seized approximately $50,000 from the properties. Appellants allege, however, that the officers actually seized $151,380 in cash and another $125,000 in rare coins. Appellants claim that the city officer stole the difference between the amount listed on the inventory sheet and the amount that was actually seized from the properties. Instead of demanding the police return the unreceipt items, the Ninth Circuit Court found qualified immunity of the officers was sufficient to protect them from prosecution. So how does that supersede Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution? According to the Ninth Circuit Court, that's okay. Because of the homeowners in the case could not prove property was stolen, the Ninth Circuit found their case to be worthy of a dismissal. The Ninth Circuit wrote the following statement. Appellants have failed to show that it was clearly established that the city officers' alleged conduct violate the Fourth Amendment. Accordingly, we hold that the city officers are protected by qualified immunity against appellants' Fourth Amendment claim. In other words, the cops allegedly got away with stealing $250,000 from citizens. That pretty much kills the homeowner's chance of ever getting justice from dirty cops. Fortunately, however, the Supreme Court has ruled on civil asset forfeiture and does not stand with law enforcement agencies' desire to get away with the loot. In February of this year, the Supreme Court of the United States put very tight restrictions on police with respect to civil asset forfeiture. The Supreme Court of the United States concluded excessive fines should not result from search and seizure of individuals' private property. But a way around that for police is to simply not receipt all they took. Go figure, but that's precisely what Jessup and Agion claim happened to them. The war on drugs, the war on gambling, all that continues. Ain't that fascinating? I know that's why at the state level you really have to lock that down, 10th Amendment style. Even the federal agents can't do it in the state's jurisdiction. So one of the areas you have to observe and support, because they can do it to any of us. We've all been victims of pain by governmental tyranny, and learn how to counter it. Always be vigilant, my friends. 10th Amendment actions can stop the feds and everyone else in their way. That's in the way. Alright. This one here just came from Mises.org, part of the Mises Institute. This was originally done sorry about that. Paul Boyce. It's interesting. It says, why housing is more affordable in Tokyo? Interesting, because Tokyo is one of the most expensive cities in the world. Let's see what they have to say about this. Came out on the 20th of September. Paul Boyce, housing is one of the main drivers in the cost of Housing is one of the main drivers in the cost of living. Government increases this cost through zoning regulations, complicated impact fees, and permitting delays. This is a fact that was acknowledged by the Citizens Obama administration when it stated, barriers to housing development are exacerbating the housing affordability crisis, particularly in regions with high job growth and few rental vacancies. Land use laws are now the most prohibitive housing regulation. It takes a scarce resource and makes it even scarier. A study by Geiser and Goryoko of Harvard University found that land use controls play a dominant part in making housing expensive. They found that measures of zoning strictness are highly correlated with high prices. In areas such as New York City and California, where land use regulations are strict, the cost of housing property diverges from the cost of construction. Owners and those who rent are paying for the cost of the land. So Willis regulations are put in place for one reason or another. It is the final consumer that pays for the privilege. The benefits of flexible zoning. We only need to look at Japan for the benefits of reduced regulation. It relaxed deployment rules, Urban Renaissance Law of 2002. The rules were relaxed, allowing apartments to grow higher. Height, a key factor in increasing affordability due to very high land prices. This approach had made Tokyo a relatively affordable place for the city of its size and type. For example, there's a price of a 2-bedroom apartment is over 40% less than what it is in San Francisco. It's also 31% less than New York and 23% less than London. Meanwhile, prices in the leading cities of North America and Europe continues to rise. but prices in Tokyo have fiat-lined. Some might turn Japan's declining Japanese population as an explanation, and that would work when we are talking about housing demand nationwide. The population of Tokyo itself, however, has construed to increase due to increasing urbanization. Between 2000 and 2015, Tokyo's population increased by 1.5 million as more and more citizens moved to the city to find employment. The population in London also grew by a similar amount. By contrast, New York City added less than 400,000 people to its population between 2000 and 2018. Yet Tokyo is seeing more modest price growth. A boost to supply. Naturally, the price of housing is known to go down, or at least remain stable. Oh, indeed. When supply is able to keep up with demand. Is Tokyo keeping up? Is it true that the city of Tokyo does destroy lots of housing? However, it still creates a net growth of close to 2%. This is over double the growth rates found in London, New York, and Paris. Tokyo's housing growth is far in excess of its population increases of just under 1% per year. And there's a bar of graphics on here as well for their prefecture and London's, the Tokyos, and all that, and Paris. Even Paris is more cost of living is more in housing stocks and all that. So yeah, very interesting here. So, and I'll just hit the next page. Yeah, everything's been printed out here, so that's why you hear the pages. So how is Tokyo able to produce so much housing so quickly? First, its units are smaller. The average property in Tokyo is 55 square meters compared to the 80 square meters in London. Second, there are fewer regulations within zoned areas. This means specific zoning areas can easily be turned into residential buildings. Moreover, zoning is also much less complex in Japan than in the U.S. Even then, residential housing can be built in any zone, providing flexibility in areas where housing is needed the most. Indeed, involving producers and customers have more flexible attitude toward housing overall. For example, housing is built in Tokyo with the assumption it will be replaced within a few decades. The average lifespan of housing units is usually $30. In part, this is a historic and cultural phenomenon. After the Second World War, there was an urgent need for housing. Prefabricated buildings became the norm. There is also the need to keep rebuilding to improve earthquake resistance as more sophisticated techniques developed. In a city with rapidly rising housing needs, there is really only one way to keep housing prices stable or failing: produce a lot of housing. Although Tokyo's population has continued to rapidly increase, builders in the city have managed to keep up far better than has been in cases in cities like San Francisco and London. We often hear a lot about the need to produce more affordable housing, often accompanied by schemes for relatively small numbers of subsidized units. Meanwhile, cities simultaneously intervene to prevent the production of more housing overall. A widespread lack of affordability and availability of units has been the result. Officials in Tokyo, on the other hand, appear to be taking a different approach, and it may be working. Interesting there. Like I say, it's a lot more lenient. When you do these zoning laws and all that, things skyrocket, and they ding you. Privileges, not rights. That's when they go, oh, look about government. It's a parasite of society. San Francisco, you could be two working class people, you even can't afford a place to stay. That's pretty damn sick, I would say. But one thing for sure, folks, is just one of those things you have to always remember. don't go crazy on regulations, because it can hurt people. And a lot of it's pettiness, too. Get rid of the petty garbage. And people can afford to live. And sometimes property taxes, that's another big issue as well. You can see that is another thing people need to look at. But on the other hand, is just sometimes just get a camper and find a place and chat with the people. And you can probably stay there. That's what I do. Alright, I got one more here for you, my friends. And this one here came from L. Neil Smith. At the website L. Neil Smith, which is ncc.1776.org. And it's from the Libertarian Enterprise. That's the name of the site. It's entitled The Red Flag Council. Attribute to Neil Smith, Libertarian Enterprise. Says here, in America, the highest law of the land consists of the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, commonly known as Bill of Rights. Unlike the remainder of the Constitution, which merely serve as an operating system for the government, the Bill of Rights is an exclusive property of the American people. They are a guarantee of liberty and the essential condition historically on which the rest of the Constitution was ratified. The Bill of Rights is not simply a laundry list of things that government generously allows its humble subjects to do. Go to Canada if that's the kind of society you prefer. Go to disarmed and prostrate Australia. It is a list of things that government is absolutely forbidden to do by the people which were meant to own and control it. Far better name for it would have been the Bill of Limits. As such, Bill of Rights was never intended by its authors to be readable and understandable only by so-called or self-appointed elite experts, but by everyday citizens. The mandates are not to be trivialized or interpreted away by judges, courts, lawyers, or collectivist legal scholars, whose real interest lies in controlling individual lives by naked brute force if necessary. Ordinary Americans are entitled to express any opinion they wish. We are guaranteed them under the First Amendment. Politicians, political employees, bureaucrats, and police officers gave up that right when they took an oath of office required by law to uphold and defend the Constitution. Accordingly, any political bureaucrat or cop attempts to nullify, to suspend any part of the Bill of Rights in any way is a criminal. Having A, committed perjury when he took his oath of office, B, for disregarding the civil rights provisions of Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Sections 241 and 242, and C, having engaged what amounts to act of a rebellion against the Constitution forbidden under the 14th Amendment. As an additional crime, D is to be found in the Bill of Rights itself, specifically the Second Amendment, which asserts unwritten and duly ratified laws are allowed to do that. The right of the people to keep and bear arms, which the 18th century terminology simply means the right of an individual to own and carry weapons, is necessary for the security of a free state. That means clearly that any politician, bureaucrat, or cop who tries to take weapons away from Americans is endangering the security of a free state and is therefore guilty of treason. Okay, Rick Scott, Gary Farmer Jr., Gary Moratis, and many others that supported the Stoneman-Douglas Act, Safety Act, which had that language of extreme risk order or red flag laws. And many other states as well. Continue on here, which famously calls strictly under due process of law, mind you, for especially severe punishment involved a lengthy rope and the drop through a trapdoor. Talk about being deplatformed. It brings a whole new meaning to the expression swingers and to hanging judge as well. Now, you may well wonder, I actually pretend I can hear you asking, why these laws have not been energetically enforced and these parasites have not been properly meted out. It's simply because the criminals themselves have been in charge of the law. And for a long, long time, if they hadn't, just to point out a single example. Wyatt Earp and his pack of brothers, far from any kind of heroes, would have been among the first trapdoor droppies for having forcibly created the first gun-free zone in Dodge City, Kansas. The man himself was beyond corrupt, a crook, a whoremonger, a thug, an apologist for the Lincoln administration's brutalities, and was continuing a vendetta against impoverished former Confederates out west. But as usual, I have digressed. Now the security of a free state is threatened with red flag laws, which is a red flag, quote, unquote, laws, a simple-minded evil scheme to circumvent the Second Amendment entirely and out of the Constitution and use corrupt judges and the police to forcibly strip everyone of their means of personal and national defense. It cannot stand. Clearly, Congress, the various state legislators, and the egregiously mislabeled justice system are not up in doing the right thing in this regard. If they were every Capitol building in the nation would be filled with empty seats rather than empty suits. That's why I'm proposing, and with extreme reluctance, believe me, an organization to provide new guards for our future security. As a quote there. I'm just going to flip over. An unquote. Interesting. Okay. The Red Flag Law Council will be a national group, a step beyond the National Rifle Association or the Second Amendment Foundation or even Gunners of America or my alma mater, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, that publicly list politicians, bureaucrats, and police by name. Not the same as doxing them. All those have taken an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution and betrayed it. The Red Flag Council will relentlessly work toward their prosecution. With an eye toward the future, it would be wise to track candidates and their views on constitutional rights as well. The Red Flag Council, American colonists, won their revolution thanks largely to the clunky shot range, quote, Brown Bess, unquote, a bit of blunderbuss, which with the Crown was accustomed to enforcing its imperial will. By comparison, significant elements among the rebels were equipped with assault rifles, their own deadly flintlock rifles, which ray guns, phasers. By comparison, we were better armed than the bad guys were, which is actually how the Founding Fathers wanted to remain forever. The high-capacity semi-automatic weapons we enjoy today are simply our flintlocks. The, quote, Red Flag Council, unquote, English lawyers and judges wear their white wigs for the same reason that rattlesnakes have rattles. there have been any red flag laws back them. I'd be writing this now with a British accent. As it is, the flight began with an attempt by 1,200 redcoats, which ended for them in a humiliating rout to confiscate private weaponry at Lexington and Concord. They should have known better. I'll bet a lot of them did. Continue on here. The quote, Red Flag Council, unquote. The whole idea since then had been that civilians ought to be at least as well armed as the military. Maybe even better, setting Wyatt Earp aside, the first large-scale infringement of the individual right to own and carry weapons was in the 1930s. It was disguised as anti-gangster legislation because it was an unconstitutional power grab. Entitled because Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his communist pals were wetting their panties, afraid of a coup, which very nearly happened. Look it up. That was like with the Nazi, American Nazi regime. The, quote, Red Flag Council, unquote. Since then, the government and its instability, greedy left, have ridden roughshod over rights that were supposed to have been guaranteed to us, and the right wing has started to join them. It is no coincidence that the resident parasites in politics, who want to steal as much of what we've earned from us as they can, also demanded that we be forced somehow to give up what my friend, the late Aaron Zellman, used to call our, quote, liberty teeth, unquote. The, quote, Red Flag Council, unquote. If you want to help us in some way, let us know. We could use your assistance to help keep this a free country. Having striven against the dark side since 1968, I'm absolutely determined that now is going to cost them something at long last. There are at least 100 million gun owners of America. I can't think of a single Democrat who deserves to occupy anything but a jail cell. And if we're going to stay home next November because of our side took us for granted the ways Democrats do black people and failed to adequately defend our rights, no Republican will ever hold office again. Can't argue with L. Neil Smith. I read some of his work, Mitzvah and Hope, which is about interesting. It's like technically it was like two-part series. Very interesting books on what I think about Hope, because Alexander Hope was a man that was a successful businessman in the military, and he wanted to run for president and use the Bill of Rights culture, preserve it. And he had lots of multiple opposition, threats. He got shot at a few times. And, very good book. And they actually threw certain people in prison arrested because they failed their oath of office. Yeah, it's a good book to check out. But one thing about Illinois Smith said, he's right. It may be hardcore for a lot of people, but you know what? You can't be, when it comes to politics, you can't be a softie, you can't sugarcoat it, you gotta tell it like it is. That's how these cockroaches think. They believe you're that damn stupid, pathetic, and useless individuals. They believe they want to tell you how to wipe your rear end, make love to your wife or husband, and when to have a family, how many kids you should have. That's one of the areas you gotta look at. Become the ripple effect. It has happened in the past. Look up 20th century genocide and democide. Look up stuff pertaining to certain people were not allowed to have firearms in other states, including Maryland, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia. No Guns for Negroes is a good film by the JPFO. Youth for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Check it out. You'll find it. Very good stuff. past is today's greatest teacher, friends. We all got to remain vigilant. It doesn't matter what your color, race, creed, etc., gender. We all have natural rights, not civil. There's a big difference because you were born with them and they're inalienable. Civil has got to be by the law, by men. And we got higher beings or natural law, laws of nature. So even if you believe God or not, you have natural rights too. And that's the bottom line. All right, friends, thank you for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, if you send something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. I love hearing from you guys. It's really cool. And I'm gonna add information on here. You can find these stories, and you can share them with others. Okay. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.